Welcome to the Whiskey Congress. Honest, open talk dedicated to speaking the truth to those who are open to hearing it. Black, white, right, left. Most importantly, honest, bold, and fueled by good whiskey. In Whiskey Veritas, we are Whiskey Congress. Join the evolution.
Welcome once again to Whiskey Congress. We are coming to you live from, well, not really live, you'll be hearing this recorded, but we're coming to you from the Barley House in downtown Cleveland.
Technicalities, Jim. Technicalities.
Right.
We do apologize from the offset if the sound is a little bit not quite as clear as we have been lately. We're off-site.
We're in the cigar room, and that's the fan that keeps the air clean. So
right, but unfortunately we're not smoking cigars because
it's
kind of hard to smoke cigars and do a quality podcast when you talk a lot. So especially if you're not talking about the cigars.
I'd be willing to try, but not
fair
today.
enough.
Not today. But we are drinking, and we are drinking whiskey.
Yeah,
whiskey chosen by you.
Yeah, so it's it's a Scotch. It's an Arbor 12, and kind of going with what they have here, and. So, offset, I'm a big fan of Arbor and kind of what they produce. I think they often provide just a clear, clean, crisp tasting whiskey that has some quality flavor notes that I think you can pick up. Just off the rip, I'll go with my score first. I give it a 92. I love the flavor, and then again, I'm big on alcohol content, and this hits in at I think about a 90 proof, if I'm not mistaken.
I didn't look; it was actually served to us at a bar. I gave it a 91.
Okay,
I think it's outstanding. I mean, it's like we said, when you get to 90, you're doing something very right. When you every point you get above that, you're pushing it further, and this is short of my all-time Islay favorites. Islay Scotch favorites. This is really fucking good.
Right, and so with Abuna, Abuna is another offering from Arbor, but this is just their 12-year offering, and it's just, and typical, like 12 years is your typical age statement whiskey, right? So once you get beyond 12, just the longer it sits in the barrel, that's more time on the shelf, which, and to the company, that means that's longer before they can see a return on their money, typically is why the price goes up for whiskeys that are aged longer. Right? But this is their 12-year, which is kind of the standard in a lot of instances, and, it's just phenomenal. Now, what I was referencing was Abuna. Arbor Abuna doesn't have an age statement, but it hits a lot stronger than this. The flavor is good, but it's so strong. The alcohol content is so high that it's almost too strong. So I would actually probably rate this above, something that they've received a lot of, right? That they charge more for, and they receive a lot of acclaim for. So, but that's Arbor 12. I think you can go and get that in a store for roughly, your typical, whiskey store or liquor store. I think it runs probably about $50-$60.
Okay.
And it's a good, I think that's a solid offering to have on the shelf. If you're looking for something different, or you want to get into Scotch, this is not a bad place to start at all.
I agree. This is really, really good stuff. All right, well, Steve, I hope we're still around for our next show, because the government's going to shut down and the whole world's coming to an end.
Oh, right, because of all the money we get from the government
to
do our show.
So I was watching CNN today, and they actually had a countdown to government shutdown clock going on while they were talking about, the likelihood of it happening. And when we've complained in the past about infotainment, I don't think I've ever felt more annoyed by the infotainment aspect of what CNN was doing. It was garbage journalism, in my opinion. Like the countdown fucking matters. Okay, technically at midnight tonight, a bunch of government services will get stopped if they don't come to an agreement on something. And yes, I have no problem saying, playing on both your houses. Both Republicans and Democrats are playing politics with this. It's been done a bunch of times before, and it's a real indicator of what's fucked up with our political system.
I fully agree with you, especially on the infotainment aspect. I mean, I think, just earlier this week we had, Trump tweet out his fake news awards.
Right.
And the problem with that is, there's multiple problems with him doing that. It's a direct assault on free speech. But, if you looked at those awards, a lot of the awards that he handed out for the fake news awards dealt with, where the different news outlets got shit wrong, right? Like where it was clearly wrong, it was false, and we know that because they had to, issue an apology, retract the statement, correct something, and while Trump is petty, right, literally like a high school girl, for his, like how he lets it get under his skin, where Obama was the exact opposite. I mean, I think Obama let stuff get under his skin, but he was a little bit more tactful in the way he dealt with it. The bottom line is that these news agencies have, I think, long ago lost their way in terms of actually reporting the news, being objective, and giving us the information and let us figuring it out. They're trying to control the narrative. They're trying to tell us how we should think and what we should think, and that's problematic. And you can that's not the point Trump is trying to make here. Trump is just pissed off that people are not saying nice things about him, right? And so the whole pettiness things comes in. Right. So where I'm going with this whole thing with CNN is that's what they're drumming this up, and the thing they're focusing. CNN is focusing on how the Republicans are screwing this up, and Trump and everything else. Fox News is saying how the Democrats are being obstructionists, and it's all going to go to shit because the Democrats didn't do this, and Chuck Schumer and Schumergate and blah blah blah,
and Hillary Clinton because
right. I mean, and absolutely something to do with Hillary Clinton and Obama, right? I mean, it's also Obama's fault as well, and it's just, as you said, an example, or I guess a perfect sort of way to show this is where we are. This is who we are. We can't get anything done because none of this is really about the people. This isn't about the actual people that DACA would affect, right? This isn't actually about the military, right? Because Trump keeps tying it, DACA and the military. It's not about that. This is about wins in the public eye. Right? It's not actually about helping people. It's about just saying, all right, I got to win. Right? And as much as I talk about winning, yes, it's very important. But now, I mean, you're winning, both sides are playing with people's lives, their money, their paycheck, their ability to live for what? So that CNN can say the Democrats won, or that the Republicans lost, or Fox News can say that the Republicans won or the Democrats lost.
And we're recording this on Friday, so it is currently 6 hours and change until the potential government shutdown, which is a kind of a misleading term anyway. The government doesn't shut down; it's all what's deemed non-essential services stop getting going out. Although a lot of people, because I know some people who work for a few government agencies that are deemed non-essential, they still get paid, which good. They shouldn't lose their paychecks over this. But I don't even know.
Well, so my thing on that is, one, I mean, what I do for a living, and so HUD would shut down because they're going to be deemed as non-essential. So the deals that I work on, any deal that doesn't have a closing date, basically stops getting worked on. So that directly impacts multiple projects that I have going on right now, which if this happens, it's just like, who knows, this could push my closing dates back, which is problematic.
Which could affect people getting into homes.
Right. It could affect people getting into homes being built, homes being rehabbed, just a whole slew of issues. But my thing is, you talked about people getting paid. Government shutdown, non-essential. People have to furlough. People don't get paid. Not everybody, but some. Why, if this happens, why do the congressmen still get paid? Why do the senators still get paid?
That's an excellent. That's a great question.
They're the government.
They're considered essential, I guess.
Are they though?
They shouldn't.
I mean, it's just like, listen, you guys screwed this up. So, I mean, I think it should be directly tied to their paychecks, and I feel like their paychecks and their benefits. And if you can't get a deal, then fine. You know what? Then if it's that important to you that you dig in and you can't find a compromise, which no one is willing to do anymore. No one's willing to go out and compromise. I mean, I can't get the government to compromise. I can't even get these idiots on. You can't get people on social media to compromise on a conversation happening in a comment section. So compromise is completely out the window. So if it's that, it's okay. So tie it to their checks.
Yeah, the only thing is
now
that
some of them make so much money outside of
exactly, that's what I was going to say.
That it wouldn't matter, that they wouldn't even notice.
That's like fining LeBron James $10,000. Like, oh, you got me.
Right.
I mean,
dropping the bucket.
So one of the big things in the whole fake news story was Russia, fake news, no collusion, and we'll see. But there was one event in there that I don't want to talk about a lot because there's not a whole lot to say yet. But Steve Bannon was subpoenaed, and he seemed to get kind of a sweetheart deal in the whole thing. They didn't drag him in front of a panel and make him testify on the record or anything like that yet. I don't know. If I was in Trump's shoes, having a guy as much of a loose cannon as Bannon is, in fact, I think that was his nickname, or was it just the cannon? Anyway, he, I don't know. Again, there's no news on that yet. But if he's starting to talk, if he's facing perjury charges, he's gonna be interesting.
You know, when you brought this up to me when we were talking about what we were going to talk about, I was reluctant because I don't know if we have anything. Right, I mean, he's gone in. He's not being. I mean, well, he's. I mean, he's not under oath. He's not. It's.
I think. Oh no, I think he is.
Are you sure?
No, I'm not 100% sure. I'm
okay. Because I don't believe that he is. And so,
if you're talking to the FBI, I mean, lying to the FBI is
a
crime.
True. You're absolutely right. But I don't know if this is the smoking gun that we think it is. I mean, we're basing it off the book, Fire and Fury. And so the question is, what is actionable in the statements that he said, in the statements that he made? He may very well have believed that for, Trump Jr. and Kushner and, Flynn or wasn't Flynn. It was, what's his name?
Flynn was one of them.
Oh, it was Flynn, right?
Yeah.
To all meet with the Russians, like that was treasonous. Okay, fine. But that's not actionable. We already knew that they met with them, right? If that's his opinion, okay, great. But, we know that they met with them. We know the circumstances of which they met with them. So the question is that a crime, right? And so what can Steve Bannon add to this conversation about that particular meeting that makes it from a bad decision to a criminal decision?
Fair. We don't know, so we'll have to wait and see what shakes out in the next couple of weeks. But the higher up the food chain they go without charging and they've already charged several people, but the higher up the food chain they go where they're still looking for someone to cooperate means they're looking higher up the food chain to ultimately charge. Maybe that's speculation.
I think that's speculation. We just don't know what they have, what they know, what they're chasing. If you go to Twitter, there's so many different theories, conspiracies, ruminations of what Mueller could have, in his possession. And I tend to err on the side, on the conservative side, thinking probably not much. I don't know. I mean, now my biggest thing with this has always been follow the money. I've had concerns about, Trump has numerous properties where the Russians set money in them, properties that were going under. The Russians came in, they put money in there. They propped these properties up. These properties went from being, possibly, going under, bankrupt, what have you,
shitholes perhaps,
to all of a sudden now they have enough money to function and their operational budgets are perked up, and now they're running smoothly or whatever. So I have some issues and concerns about that. And if you're chasing the money that route, I don't know if it's really about going up the ladder, that's an instance of going wherever the money takes you, right? And it may not actually take you to the White House, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Trump is okay. You know what I mean? Because he may not say, listen, I can't impeach you. There's nothing that you did in terms of getting into office that is impeachable, but you were laundering money, right? Which is something that Bannon had mentioned, was talking about following the money, although he was referencing Jared Kushner. But if you follow the money with Trump and that money that went into his properties, and he was a part of a money laundering scheme hatched by the Russians, now that's different. Because you can ask him about that, and if he, perjures himself or whatever, or if he's found guilty, now the whole impeachment thing is a lot different.
Well, and the other thing is Trump has been talked about as to whether or not he would testify in front of Mueller's commission, and I heard his lawyer basically say that they're completely open to that. His lawyer's name is Ty Cobb, by the way, or one of his lawyers.
Yeah, I keep
Cobb.
seeing that, and I'm just like, oh, this doesn't look good.
Take the most racist athlete in modern whatever,
right?
And choose a lawyer. I mean, whatever. But I kept hearing Ty Cobb said this. I'm thinking, Ty Cobb.
Well, I kept reading it, trying to figure out. I'm like, how are they trying to tie Ty Cobb to Trump? I mean, like that's you want to talk about infotainment or whatever,
right.
Like that's ridiculous. But now I realize that's just his lawyer's name, which is, I mean, I don't think that was done by accident. I mean, his parents probably named him that after Ty Cobb, and so the guy's thought process is probably.
If my last name was Manson, I wouldn't name my kid Charlie.
Right. I was going to say Maryland, but yeah, you're right.
Charlie's worse.
Just a little bit.
Distinctly worse. Anyway, we'll see where that goes. But yeah, Ty Cobb said that the president would be happy to cooperate. I'm like, bullshit. The last thing you want is a guy under oath where if he says the wrong thing, that becomes a crime. Assuming it's dishonest. But all right. We'll see what happens.
Yeah,
Bannon to be
track
continued.
It. Yeah, we'll track it. See where it goes. I mean, it's not like he's got to go to work.
There's that, right?
So he's got all the time.
And so we talked to Mike last week, Mike Wood Jr. We always talk about Baltimore, where he's from, and we should probably talk to him soon because this is a fucked up week in Baltimore. The chief of police got fired.
So let's just hang there for a second. The chief of police gets fired. I think his name is either Keith Davis or Kevin Davis or whatever. He's fired. And it's an interesting move. I think, I spent a lot of time in Baltimore for work. So, and working with the city of Baltimore, their housing authority, which, involved me dealing some with the mayor's office, and, other officials, in the city. And so, I watch and monitor how they operate in other realms besides housing. And at the beginning of the new year of 2018, their mayor tweeted out that, 2018 was the year to change the narrative about the city of Baltimore. And that struck me as odd because changing the narrative isn't what Baltimore needs. To me, that sounds like we need to change the conversation people are having about Baltimore. Let's slap some lipstick on a pig and get this thing going the right way. My thought was, Mayor, you have, 350 murders in your city last year, which, per 100,000 people, that's like 50 murders per 100,000 people, which is ridiculous.
And it's one of the few cities where the murder rate was rising compared to, New York City has got one of the lowest murder rates in the city's history.
Right, and it's been dropping, and crime generally, violent crime and murders have generally been dropping across the country except for a few
specific pockets.
A few specific areas. And I just thought that, that statement is part of the problem in places like Baltimore and Chicago. They're so worried about how the media portrays them and dealing with, navigating the media and making sure that things don't get out, that they don't focus on actually fixing the problem. And fast forward to this week where she fires the chief of police and brings in, his deputy as the new chief of police. And it's a move, and I don't know if it's a move in the right direction. I mean, you can look at the police chief and say, all right, you're kind of a scapegoat here. Because he's only been on the job as a police chief since 2015.
Okay.
Right, as murder rates started to rise, because the guy before him got fired because the murder rate had been rising, and they needed, they wanted new leadership to kind of stem the flow of violence in the city. And so he's been on the job for, I guess 2 to 3 years. He obviously hasn't won. I think 2016, the murder rate dropped by about 50 murders total. And then this year it rose back up prior to, exceed what it had been previously to set a record. And so,
is that why though? There's other stuff going on in Baltimore in their police force in terms of a gun task force.
That's where that's the cause given for his termination was that violence in the city was going the wrong way. They had a record year in murders. That was unacceptable. So that's why they fired him. Now, what you're talking about is, Officer Wayne Jenkins. He was a sergeant. He was the leader of the gun trace task force in Baltimore. An elite unit set out to, get guns off the streets. Wayne Jenkins was a rogue cop, and he had a rogue unit. He was he had pled guilty to everything from racketeering, robbery, stealing drugs, redistributing drugs back in the street, planting evidence on suspects. There was a bail bondsman in Baltimore County that he had to deal with, where he would bring this bail bondsman, who's not a police officer, not a city official. He would bring him to crime scenes. The guy would pose as a cop, and he would be the one who would take the evidence out. He would take the drugs. He would take the money. He would take whatever they found. And then, obviously, instead of taking it back to evidence at police headquarters, he took it back to his house. And then he was selling drugs out of his house. And he got busted. They didn't bust the bail bondsman thinking that he was tied to they just busted him for dealing drugs. They were running a sting operation and find out that, he's tied to this Wayne Jenkins guy. And this is how he was getting some of the drugs and money that he was dealing with. And you want to talk about a problem with your police force and, citizens not trusting police and, losing faith in those that are sent to protect and serve, with air quotes. That's
hard to top.
That's hard to top. And like this wasn't something that just kind of happened. They didn't do it once or twice. It goes far back, at least to 2010.
This is straight out of American Gangster, right?
American Gangster, The Wire, The Shield. Pick a show with rogue, dirty cops, and you got it.
And this wasn't life imitating art. This is art imitating life.
Right.
Whatever.
Or vice versa. But no, this speaks to a broader issue of, when you have the Black Lives Matter movement, which I have plenty of issues with. I could critique it all day, but the essence of that movement was, police are mistreating certain citizens, and they are doing so with impunity. And you have a situation here where, and then the response back was, screw you, black people. If you just, are compliant and you comply and you don't say anything, you're nice to the police officers, then everything would be fine. If you just paid your tickets, then everything would be fine. If you weren't all black and lazy and niggerish, you wouldn't have these problems that you have with the police. But what we see is this guy there are hundreds of people who have had to be released from prison, federal, state, local, who he and his team dealt with. And the reason why is because they were planting evidence. They were lying, and they are admitting to it, right? And if you have people in Baltimore, was a place where the people were rioting and saying, listen, they are dogging us. This is what they're doing to us. They're holding us down. And, the backlash to people who were rioting was just like, well, look at you guys rioting. This is why you guys get arrested. If you can't see why people were frustrated, and you can't see the problem with it right in your face, right? A guy telling you, I lied. I planted evidence. I broke the law so many ways. I went out of my way to put this group of people in jail because they were vulnerable. Then I don't know what else to tell you.
I got nothing to add to that. I mean, it is as pretty much in terms of corruption and whatever as bad as it gets. We talked a while back about a police officer who was going to testify against these guys.
Yeah, Sean Suter.
Sean Suter, who died the day before he was supposed to testify by his own gun, I believe. That's right, isn't it?
Well, he was shot in the head. We don't know if it was by his own gun or not. I don't think that information came out.
Okay.
We had talked to Mike Wood Jr. about this. Mike is quick to say, don't underestimate, stupidity,
the power of stupidity.
The power of stupidity, and that the guy could have had some sort of accident. Okay. I mean, I'll buy it. I mean, people are stupid. Deal with them every day. That being said, it's a hell of a coincidence. You got a guy who's about to go in and testify against one of his fellow police officers who was deep in the shit here. The idea that he fell on his own gun, I mean, it's still not clear how they found him. This is also the only unsolved murder of an on-duty police officer in the history of Baltimore police.
I did not know. That's a pretty amazing statistic.
Right.
Wow.
I mean, I mean, listen. Yeah, I get it. People are stupid, not to underestimate it. But that being said, that this guy in an alley just pulled out his gun and somehow shot himself. Like, hey, is my gun clean? And then shoots himself in the head. I mean, come on, Mike. Let's be honest here. I mean, I listen. I can't tell you if Wayne Jenkins had anything to do with this guy's murder because he hasn't said it. I don't know if he's been asked. But what I can tell you is, if I'm investigating this, I'm going to turn around and look into it, and I'm sure someone has, right? I'm sure someone has, maybe, but I don't. I mean, again, with corruption like this,
exactly. Unfortunately, the people who are responsible for looking at this are the same people that are behind some of these other things.
And honestly, to be honest, I think it's crazy that the mayor hires the deputy of the police chief. I think in this particular instance, you have a rising crime rate. You have someone who was already there. You have this situation going on with corruption and police just completely abusing power. I think you need to bring in someone new from outside to sit at the top. Now, it could be a situation where, listen, who the fuck wants that job?
Right.
I don't know.
And that could still happen.
Mike, you want a job?
That could still happen. I mean, if someone needs to be put in an interim basis.
They said it's going to be made permanent.
Okay.
So
okay, yeah. I mean, unless there's some mitigating circumstance we don't know about, that the guy she put in place was this, bastion of integrity. Maybe, let's hope, but it doesn't sound like a system that breeds that.
Right, and what it sounds like to me is that he's going to be fired in 2 years. Right, I mean, he's probably going to.
So it'd be like a head coach of the Buffalo Bills.
Dun-dun-dum. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like, I mean. He was on the force. He was a part of it. What is he going to bring to the table? I mean, that he wasn't already bringing to the table. I'm not going to say that. I can't say he was part of the problem, but I mean, if you got some, I mean, and who knows? Maybe the other guy was stifling him. And
so you want to your point. If he's the guy, fine. But there probably should have been a search and a I don't know, an effort to examine deeply, which again, maybe it happened. We just don't know about it. We don't know about
I mean, because this, the situation with Wayne Jenkins, that's not brand new. You had the cop that was going to testify against him back in November, so she might have been looking. I mean, they probably. They were aware of the murders that were going on, and probably by the end of the year they were just watching that number tick up. So I'm sure maybe she did start to do some sort of research, and realize nobody wants the job.
This was a sudden thing from our perspective, but it might not have been a sudden thing.
Anyway, but, no matter what, Baltimore and Chicago and Cleveland and Detroit, they're gonna have to figure this shit out on their own. Going back to the government shutdown. Congress and the Senate, we send them there to do, for our bidding. But in reality, no one in Congress or the Senate is really working for us. I like Cory Booker, right? Because everyone everyone likes to give him the thumbs up. But Cory Booker right now isn't out there for the people. Cory Booker is out there so he can become president. That's what he's doing. He's focused on auditioning to become president. He is not worried about the day-to-day actions in the state of New Jersey.
Okay.
Now, maybe, hold on. Listen, I'm not going to say that he's not, but at the end of the day, he's not, right? I mean, let's just be real.
The one thing he's done, though, that I do applaud him for, he's actually done a few things I applaud him for, but he is, as far as I know, the only one in the Senate to put a bill out to remove marijuana from the...
Great, Jim. You know how easy that is to do?
Okay, but he did it, and who else has?
Okay, great.
I mean, yeah,
but he did it with no intentions
nowhere.
of it going anywhere, right? And so, listen, I get it. He did it, and that the reason why he did it is to counter for that exact reason. So you can say, look, he did something, right? That's exactly the reason why he did it.
Perfectly possible. I'm not going to say you're wrong about
that. I'll give him 2 tokens for it.
Okay,
right? You get 2 tokens for it. Congratulations.
It's 2018.
But actually, so we need. So all right, fine. Let
me throw a hypothetical at you. If that bill hits the Senate floor, it would need, I presume, 60 votes to pass. Do you think it passes?
No.
I think it does. I think the issue is becoming, well, first of all, how many states is it legal? I think it's medically legal in like 28 or 29 states, and it's recreationally legal in, I think, we're up to 10 now. I think Vermont and New Hampshire just went pro-pot. I think this is one of the few things that I think the snowball has gotten to the point where even with the best efforts of our buddy Jefferson Beauregard Sessions, this snowball is not going to stop. My prediction.
Okay, so get it to the floor, Corey.
All right, yeah.
Get it to the floor, right? I mean, if he was really, I mean, like he'd be like.
Well, it's tough for him as a Democrat because he can't get anything to the floor because they don't control the Senate.
Reach across the aisle.
Find
somebody.
Fair.
I mean, like you
should be able to get every Republican senator in Colorado. I'm assuming I don't know who the senators in Colorado are. I think one's a Democrat, one's a Republican. But every Republican senator who is in a legal weed state that was furious with Sessions,
right,
for what he did. You're right. He should reach across the aisle. He should get this out there. You're absolutely right.
And I mean, pushing it heavily. Because it's important, it matters.
Well, and if you do it the way of California, it changed. No, you said he's not representing New Jersey. If people start getting their criminal records cleaned up because we finally grew up as a country and said, okay, we've been kind of stupid for the past 100 years. And again, it cracks me up every time I go off about legal weed because I don't smoke weed. I never have.
Yeah.
If it became legal, I might. I haven't decided on that yet. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. In case you're wondering,
the things you think about.
Well, yes,
but I mean, and you know what? Actually, it's probably a good reason. I mean, there's probably you have plenty of good reasons to think about it. I mean, you got aches and pains and
blood inflammation issues. I got high blood pressure.
I mean, so who knows? Maybe it could help you with those things. So it's worth it for you to review. But I didn't mean to attack Cory Booker, Senator Booker, at that aggressively. I mean, it came out more aggressively than I wanted it to. I shouldn't say that he's not fighting for the people in New Jersey or that he doesn't care, but his focus is bigger than that. My thing is, we need a balance. We need balance across the board. If we're gonna right this ship, if we're gonna quiet the noise. You got everyone is pissed off, right? Every demographic of people is pissed off. I mean, my 3-year-old daughter, I think, is gonna protest something here soon. If we're gonna quiet that, not that I'm saying it needs to be quiet, but if we're gonna start to resolve some of these issues that people are upset about, then it's gonna require compromise. It's going to require that not everyone can be thrilled and happy with the end result.
And sometimes it doesn't need to be compromised as much as it needs to be use some fucking common sense and reason and logic. I mean, so many of the things that we just talked about in the government shutdown everyone knows the solution. Everyone knows the solution to DACA. Everyone knows the solution to you're going to fund the government. We're not going to permanently shut this down. We fucking can't. So, but rather than be reasonable adults and say, okay, I'm not going to, hold this up, let's just throw a tantrum and see whose tantrum makes the American. And everything I heard on CNN today, everything I heard on TV was, who do you think will get the blame if this happens? What? That's the fucking problem. That's the fucking problem.
Who gets the blame?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and that's a great.
They're saying the calculation by these two groups it's going to fall worse on you. So I'm going to do something that I know hurts my people because I think you're going to suffer more for it in 2018 than I will. Let's you and I, Steve, who can hold our breath the longest and see who passes out first to show.
That's a great point. It just and it just goes back to my frustrations with the government, and going back to what we were talking about with Baltimore is Baltimore, Detroit, Cleveland, St. Louis,
probably throw in Atlanta,
Charlotte, whatever. Your problems aren't going to be solved on a congressional level. You're going to have to solve your own problems. You're going to have to take the situation into your own hands within the laws that we have, the way that we have them, and start to do the work that's required to fix these problems, to go in and ask some tough questions of your different government agencies. Are they really serving the will of the people? Get into some of these communities and figure out what the pain points are and why they're having some of the, some of this crime that keeps cycling back through, and how can you improve upon it, and not just throwing money at some other agency or throwing a grant out and saying, whoever has a nonprofit that wants the money, come get it. It's going to take work and effort beyond what's happening.
And I mean, honestly, this is way pie in the sky, but one of the things I think we need, exactly in line with what you said, is, and I'm going to sound totally Republican here, but less federal government, more local government acting. They need to work together. I get that. But if you look at things at the local level, that's where most day-to-day impact stuff happens. And
right.
so when I talk about legalizing weed on a federal level, that doesn't mean it becomes legal across the land. It just says we don't have a contradiction between our states and our federal governments, which we currently have on that issue, and that's fucking crazy. I mean, literally, a California highway patrol officer could not say, you have this on you, therefore I'm going to arrest you for this, but an FBI agent could.
Right, exactly.
It's crazy.
And now, I think, decriminalizing it on the federal level and then leaving it up to the states, that's kind of your ideal situation from a republic standpoint. And people will complain about that. We have that issue right now with gun control, right? Like, you have a CCW in Ohio, but if you go into Illinois or New York or New Jersey, then
I'm a felon.
You're a felon. So, it's never perfect, but we can start to chip away at it.
The difference between those is you're talking about difference from state to state, and I get your point, but also at least I know in Ohio, here are my set of rules. It's not like in Ohio, here's my set of rules, unless a federal officer comes in,
right.
And then it's
that's what I'm saying. Let's get. I'd rather get there first, where we remove the umbrella.
Get the federal shit out of there. I agree.
Remove the umbrella of the federal government, and then let's deal with it state to state.
Right. And if you want to smoke weed in California, you're good. And if you want to carry it over into Utah and they say you can't do it, well, that's Utah law. You can't do it there.
Right.
Done. All right. So you, on our website, wrote an article about a comic.
Right. And, it wasn't that it was about a comic. Obviously there's a movement dealing with women and sexual harassment and sexual abuse. Aziz Ansari is a comic. He was on Parks and Rec. He's got a show on Netflix, Master of None.
Yeah.
He's revered. He's a funny guy.
Well,
his comedy is funny. He was good on Parks and Rec. I haven't seen his show on Netflix, but I don't have an issue with Aziz Ansari as a comic. When I read this story, I was skeptical at first. The title of the story is I went on a date with Aziz Ansari and it ended badly, or poorly or whatever. So it's like, okay, that's kind of okay. So I read the story, and as I'm reading it, I I went through a number of different emotions, right? I mean, and I think there's different parts of the story. I won't go through the encounter.
Let's not do a play-by-play.
Yeah, play-by-play of what happened there. But what I will say is, I think as a man, you have to be aware of what's happening right now,
right,
in our country and across the world. That sexual harassment is real, sexual abuse is real, and I've said this before that there's going to be an overcorrection. Now, some of it is makes sense, some of it doesn't, and I think that you have to be acutely aware of the situations that you put yourself in, and how you approach them. And I think this is an instance where Aziz Ansari was not aware. Was it a crime what he did? Listen, by statute in Ohio, I can make a pretty damn good case for him in gross sexual imposition. I absolutely could, based on what the statute says.
Okay.
Listen, and that's legit, right? If she wanted to bring charges, you can. Based off of what she said, if you could prove it, right? If that's what happened, then you could, now gross sexual imposition isn't, rape to the umpteenth degree and you go to jail for 20 years, but there's a possibility he have to register as a sex offender and other things. But, could it be a crime? Yes, no, maybe. Is it, charging him with a crime and convicting him, is it the just thing? I don't think so. But what I will say is he's got to be smarter. You as a man have to be smarter with what you do with your dick, right? The big rule is keep your dick in your pants, right?
All right. When does that rule change? After you go down on a girl on your marble countertop, I think at that point, that rule...
It changes when she says, let's slow down.
Okay.
He goes to get a condom. She says, let's slow down. Right.
Okay.
And she, you go back, you try to make out with her, you're sticking your fingers down her mouth,
which is weird, but okay.
She's moving away from you. You're pulling her hand to your dick. She's moving your hand away. She's clearly trying to get away. She goes into the
word "get away" I think is the wrong word. She's deflecting. She's not trying to escape, and he's holding her down.
She's trying to not be close to him. She's removing herself from his presence, and then she goes into the bathroom, comes out, and says, hey, I don't want to feel pressured because then I would hate you. I don't want to hate you. He says...
We're doing a play-by-play now.
He says, let's chill. Let's just go to the couch and chill. Mind you, they're naked. And then he says, why don't you suck my dick? Listen, if a girl says, don't pressure me because I don't want to hate you, my instinct isn't, all right, well, then why don't you suck my dick? That'll calm things down. You want to talk about common sense, let's have common sense, right? If you got a girl who's uncomfortable with the situation, I think she clearly showed that she was uncomfortable with it. If you can't pick up on that, then that's part of the fucking problem.
Okay, now we're only getting her side of the story, and I don't know how long, I think it was a couple years ago this happened.
Like last year or something like that.
I don't know.
Listen, Jim, all I'm saying is...
You're saying be smart. I won't argue with you there. But to say that this girl belongs in the whole, victims of Harvey Weinstein, victims of the...
I'm not.
I know you're not, but some people were.
I'm not saying that, and that's not the conversation. The conversation is, how do you, if you, as a guy, we're two men. I think a lot of guys listen to our show and some women. You want to avoid this. You see this onslaught of, Harvey Weinstein and Aziz Ansari and Matt Lauer and everything else. You want to know how you protect yourself if you're a single guy out there dating right now? Be smarter.
When I was dating regularly in my college years and post-college years, I cannot tell you how many times I was in a situation alone with a woman, made a sexual advance, got a bit of a pushback, and literally went, okay, breaks up, whatever. And then the next day got told, you're too nice. Now, I'm not saying that opens the floodgates for anything. I'm just saying that game and the way things get thought about between different parties the next day, or in this case, a year later. Well, no, they had their discussion the next day. So next day, I don't know. I just don't want Aziz Ansari to get painted with the same brush as a Harvey Weinstein.
Okay,
and I'm not saying you're not doing that, but
again,
people were.
I get that, right? I mean, and that's your big thing with sexual harassment is we can't label it all the same. And Harvey Weinstein, Aziz Ansari isn't Harvey Weinstein, and
yes,
okay, fine. But again, I'm not. I didn't label Aziz Ansari.
No, you didn't.
And I even said, listen, I don't think that charging him criminally would be the just thing to do. Right, I don't think that would be serving anybody justice. I think that would bring, possibly irreparable harm to him. And I think that while this girl's situation, while this was a very bad experience for her, I don't necessarily think that this brought her irreparable harm. I think that the harm that has been brought to her, Aziz Ansari, you can go tit for tat here in the fact that this could impact his career. He's obviously in the public spotlight. We don't know her name. His name is being splayed all over. We're talking about him right now in a really negative fashion. And so what I'm saying is, as a man, you've got to bear responsibility for these situations, right? You have to own these situations, and you have to be aware. You need to be more aware of what's going on around you. Because, listen, I wrote in the story online, you knew when your mom was mad at your dad and she didn't have to say a word, right?
Okay.
Did you or did you not?
Sure.
Right? You know when a woman that you're talking to is not happy with you, whether she says anything or not, right? I mean, we can feign like we're stupid, but you usually do, all right? You can tell my mood when I don't talk. You can tell if something is bothering me. You can tell if I can't wait to get something out because of whatever. Like you can read nonverbal cues as a 40-something-year-old adult male. Right? Aziz Ansari is a 30-plus, adult male with experience, as a comic in Hollywood, New York, and has been is an actor, as a comic, and everything else. He's an intelligent guy. His part of what he does is giving nonverbal cues so that we can read them, right? Making faces, gestures, all that other stuff, reading other actors. So you mean to tell me that he couldn't tell that this girl was uncomfortable, or did he just not give a fuck?
Well, I can say that the next day he texted her and said, I had a great time, and she replied, well, I didn't. So whether he was under the influence of alcohol or tone deaf or whatever, I don't know, but it seems clear from his next day actions that he didn't.
Okay,
now,
and
that doesn't mean it's okay not to.
But what I'm saying is, you need to be aware, right?
Fine.
You need to be aware. You gotta. I mean, if she left, how he thought she could have had a good time, based off of how she said she left. Come on. Right, I mean, she's all you guys are all the fucking same, and then she storms out in an Uber where he says, "By the way, tell him your name is Essence."
Tell me what?
Tell the Uber driver your name is Essence. So, because he got her an Uber ride.
Okay.
I guess he put it under the name Essence, like that's the girl.
Okay.
Right, and I guess that's something that he's mentioned in his comedy or on Master of None before. But my point is, we can't as men, we can't use the excuse, well, I didn't know she didn't want to have sex. She didn't say no. Right? I mean, I thought it was cool. I mean, she didn't stop me. Like, well, was she laying there like she was in a coffin, trembling? Like, I mean, listen, things happen. I don't know that. I'm not saying she was. But what I'm saying, things happen in, when two people are being intimate and it's progressing down that road. And I'm not going to say that there's never a mix-up or there's never a change of heart after the fact. But the reality is we're living in a new reality, right? Where you can't just be a bro and, just go notching on your headboard.
And that's a good thing. I mean, that I'm all for, gross, not even gross impositions. I'm trying not to use legal terms because I'm doing a terrible job, but I'm all for, changing our culture and saying, here's shit maybe that shit that was cool in the 80s. It wasn't really cool in the 80s, but was accepted in the 80s. We need to advance as a society. I'm totally down with that. I mean, you and I talked on our old show about me having rewatched the movie Revenge of the Nerds. in the movie The Revenge of the Nerds, the main character rapes the girl who becomes his girlfriend. Right. I mean, he has sex with her without her knowing it's him. And I watched that in 2014 or 15 and went, holy fuck. I cannot believe what I'm watching in a comedy by the good guy.
Yeah.
And so that used to be okay to put in a movie and call it cool. And I watched it today and, 4 years ago and went, holy fuck. And so, yeah, we need to advance as a society. Totally agree on that. In this particular case, my beef is that she's linking herself into the whole Me Too movement, and maybe we need a ooh too moment, EWW. Like, all right, this was really uncomfortable and cringeworthy, but it's not rape.
Well, but the Me Too movement isn't about rape. That's the thing.
Okay,
and that's where I mean, and
it includes that.
I mean, it definitely includes rape, but it's not only about rape. It's just about the putting women in uncomfortable situations dealing with sex.
Okay.
Now, sex in and of itself is uncomfortable when you have two people that haven't had sex before. And so
with each other is what you meant.
Well, with each other
or
before,
not at all.
But I mean, you're right. Yeah, with each other. And so, yeah, it is awkward. It is different, and there is a lot of room for error. No matter what the loudest feminist says, it's not just as cut and dry as, yes, no, and, it's not clear all the time what's happening, or what people want. And sometimes people don't even know what they want. And I don't think that it's a crime to, like, if you're being intimate with a person, if they say no, and I think there are proper and acceptable ways to try to advance the situation. Now, I think that you have to know when to stop.
Clearly, yeah.
And I mean, I think that you can do it without being abusive. You can do it without, being dangerous and manipulative. But you also have to take into account your position, right? If you're in a position of power where you're a famous person that's known, worldwide, then that plays into it. Yeah, I'm sorry.
In the case of Aziz Ansari, I don't see it that way because he's not that powerful. I mean, it's not like
he is. But listen, how did she meet him?
At some Hollywood party.
She met him at a party after the Golden Globes, right?
Right.
Where first thing
but there's different power in being starstruck, though. Right?
Well, no, there's not. I mean, not really, because look, this guy she can look at it and say, this guy is a famous actor, and if I say something against him, who's going to believe me, right? He could, who knows what type. You don't actually know the type of power that he wields. Right, in that situation. Now, what I'm saying is, and what you probably aren't comfortable with, is to say that a person like Aziz Ansari or famous people, why should they have to, go an extra step, and why should they have to be more careful? Like, why can't they just have sex and it be private and it's their thing? Well, you're a celebrity. Right, everything is out there. You're a celebrity. You want people to recognize your face, recognize your work. You want the money. This is the downside of it.
Okay, all right.
Fine. I mean, this is the downside of it. I mean, you have to be. I'm sorry, you have to be careful and you have to be smarter. And I'm not saying that he did any. I'm not saying that he necessarily did. I think in my opinion, I think the way that night would have went with me. They went from 0 to 60 quickly, right? I mean, who knows the actual time? But I mean, they're talking about fucking marble countertops and backsplash to get on the table, and he's stripping her naked and he's going down on her. Okay. Aggressive move.
Which I'm guessing she did not object to.
Right. I mean, well, again, we don't. I mean, she didn't say that she did. So I mean, okay, no, but they do that. They do a lot of other stuff. According to her, he then goes and says, "I'm gonna go get a condom." He comes back and she's like, "Whoa, pause." So at that point in time, I think in my mind, it's just like, okay, all right, cool. You know what? You're right. Was happening pretty fast. Let's slow down, whatever. But legitimately, I would have personally legitimately slowed it down to the point of, yes, let's go sit on the couch. Let's maybe put whatever clothes they took off. Let's put some of that back on. Let's just watch TV. Let's talk. Let's get you more comfortable with this situation, right? And at some point in time, you have to let you know that she's more comfortable with it.
And it appears that he believed she gave that cue and she says she didn't, right? Because otherwise he doesn't send the text the next day saying, boy, had a great time. again.
Or you send that text knowing that it was fucked up, right? And you're trying to test the waters to see.
Yeah, that's all right. That's possible.
How bad is this? What am I actually dealing with? And I have my gut feeling is that he probably in the back of his mind knew that something was wrong.
That's a reasonable speculation. Okay.
Well, that was fun.
Yeah, it was. It was a blast.
Jump into one last thing here. Obviously, I guess not obviously, but I'm a big Pittsburgh Steelers fan.
Yes.
And
by the way, I had fun hanging out with you watching that game. I know the result was awful, and I was trying to be a good wingman.
Not the time, Jim.
Okay. It's a week later.
All right. And so I'm a big Steelers fan. The Steelers lost last week to the Jacksonville Jaguars. It is what it is. I'm just a fan. I'm not on the team. So, people say, "Oh, you shouldn't be that mad." Screw you. I'm a fucking diehard sports fan. Go fuck yourself.
But to your credit, while we were out at a bar, there was a girl at the other end of the bar who was vociferously taunting Steelers fans, not knowing there were a Steelers fan present, and she was really being obnoxious. And after the game was over, and you decided to do the classy move, and you bought her a shot, and she came over to do a celebratory shot with you, and I interjected and said, he did that shot because he offered you that shot to be nice. He's actually a Steelers fan, and she rather weakly apologized. So I don't know. It was good move on your part. So you've shown that yes, you can restrain yourself.
Well, like I said, there. You know what? She smelled nice. So
okay.
But anyway, so I guess I can take a little bit of solace in the fact that Leonard Fornette, who is the monster of a running back for the Jacksonville Jaguars that, scored 3 touchdowns against the Steelers, in his Maybach or his Mercedes S or whatever he was driving, he was hit, and his Maybach, or very, very expensive 6-figure Mercedes, was totaled by a Steelers fan.
He said he got hit, and he really was a little shaken up, and he gets out of the car and he sees Pennsylvania plates, and he was like, asked them, "Are they Steelers fans?" Like, yeah, we're diehards. I don't think they were in town for the game specifically. I don't know that for sure, but
the game was in Pittsburgh.
Oh, good point. Good point. Okay, so then they weren't. Good point. But anyway, it's funny that his car got totaled by a Steelers fan 1 week after less than a week after that game.
Yeah.
And one more thing about football that, if you don't mind going into this, you've talked about race and coaching before. There were people apparently in the Steeler organization, although relatively low level in the Steeler circle, calling for Mike Tomlin to get fired, and I found that absolutely laughable. And I was watching, I don't know which show I was watching, but basically they said, if there's one thing you don't get out of the Steelers organization, it's reactionary moves on coaches. Whoever says that since 1969, there have been more popes than Steelers coaches. It's 4-3 in favor of popes. But Haley, the offensive coordinator, got fired, or didn't get his contract renewed, whatever you want to call it. And I was just curious what you thought about that, because it was kind of weird that offense was not the problem.
The issues with the Steelers and Tomlin is, you've got Ben Roethlisberger, you've got Antonio Brown, you've got Le'Veon Bell, a highly potent offense and a defense that's decent, which I think has holes and weaknesses as shown last week. The issue is, a lot of people feel that Tomlin is underachieved, and I'm in that boat. They've been really good. They've never gone less than 8-8. They go back and forth with winning the division with Baltimore. They've won it more than Baltimore. They were the 2 seed and division champs this year. You can't complain about it, but the problem is, the strikes against Tomlin is that he can't beat the Patriots.
Right. Which is a strike against almost everyone else.
But he can't beat the Patriots. And he constantly, the Steelers team plays down to the level of teams, and they lose games to teams that they should beat. And a lot of people read into that any number of things: lack of focus, lack of discipline, lack of inspiration from the coach, and so I don't think it's we got to get rid of him. He's a black coach, or this wouldn't happen if he was a white coach. I mean, there are white coaches that are fired for less. There are white coaches. I mean, now, has there been a coach with his level of success that's been fired? I really can't think of it.
Maybe
Jimmy Johnson, right?
In fact, I think that would be.
I mean, I think,
but that was a personality conflict between two gigantic egos.
So, I don't know. I won't go to the race card on that. I just don't think that it's there. I mean, as a fan, I'm frustrated. I watch the team. I know what the weaknesses are as not only just a fan, but someone that has played football, that's watched football his entire life, that's been in film rooms and film study, with people who know how to break down films. My college coach coached for the Steelers. Mark Whipple was a quarterback coach for Ben Roethlisberger the year he won his first Super Bowl. So I've been in a room with people who know how to break down film, so I can watch it, and I can tell you that there are glaring weaknesses that Tomlin needs to address. You're running out of time with Ben Roethlisberger, so we need to get I think the organization should get another Super Bowl out of him.
And what he's been in 3 and won 2?
Yes.
Okay.
He's been in 3 and he's won 2, which there's nothing wrong with that record. For
a lot of folks to take that.
Yeah.
As a Bills fan, I think I could manage it.
I mean, and Tomlin's been to 2 and won 1. I think it would mean a lot for Tomlin to win another one.
Okay, so Tomlin's only been to 2? I thought he was to 3.
No, he's only been to 2.
Okay.
Cowher won the first one. That was the one in Detroit.
Against Seattle.
And
they beat Arizona, and they
beat Arizona. That was Tomlin, and then they lost to Green Bay.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Now, I mean, I guess the what you could say though is that Mike McCarthy has a similar record as Mike Tomlin, and no one's calling for Mike McCarthy to get fired. I think actually Tomlin's record is better than McCarthy's over the same span of time. So I mean, you could kind of go there, but ultimately, listen. The standard is the standard. That's Tomlin's quote. That's the Steelers. That's painted on the Steelers' wall in the locker room. The standard is the standard, and Mike needs to live up to it. I love him as a coach. I just think he can do better. I think you also hit the nail on the head. The Steelers aren't going to be reactionary. They're not going to fire him. Not over this. Haley going needed to happen. Ben didn't like him. I wasn't a fan of Haley's play calling, and honestly,
fair.
I can't tell you if Ben was calling the plays or Todd Haley was calling the plays. Because Ben took control of that offense, probably about 2 years ago, and it got to a point where he was calling a lot of the plays. So I think part of that is let's get a new offensive coordinator in there who can, say, Ben, let's do this, and let's put the receivers in better situations so you don't have to throw these ridiculous pinpoint passes that you have to throw. Let's actually make some plays where guys are open that you can throw to, like every other team in the league that plays against us.
Is this helping with your catharsis?
No.
That was part of my goal. All right.
Thanks, Dr. Ruth.
Yeah, okay. Dr. Ruth. All right. On that note, we are at Whiskey Congress on social media. We're whiskeycongress.com. Check out our articles. Go to we can now get to our podcast directly from the website. And good talking to you, man. We're at the Barley House. We'll be back here in roughly a week for me to eat incredibly hot Carolina Reaper chips with my friend Beth. And we'll see how that goes. I watched a video of the dude from American Ninja Warrior, the host of American Ninja Warrior, eat one of these chips and literally almost be reduced to tears and telling his wife she needed to call 911. So that's what I have to look forward to, and I hope you enjoy watching me suffer. Anything else from you?
Nah, man. Good luck next week.
Yeah, thanks. That was sincere.